Let's begin by shattering the illusion. Everything you've been told about dark powers, everything you feared, rejected, suppressed, or judged is based on a misunderstanding so deep, so carefully constructed, that most people live their entire lives imprisoned by it. We've been conditioned to believe that darkness is inherently evil, that shadows are dangerous, that power when it doesn't look holy, soft, or pure is something to be feared and destroyed. But what if I told you that's not just wrong, it's spiritually backwards? What if I told you that some of the most sacred divine transformations you can ever experience only happen when you enter the darkness, not escape it? We fear dark powers because we don't understand them. But the truth is, darkness is not the enemy. Ignorance is. And ignorance is what makes you vulnerable, not the energy itself. I want you to imagine for a moment a child who is scared of their own shadow. Every time they see it, they run, cry, hide, but the shadow never leaves, it only grows when they avoid the light. That's you. That's me. That's all of us until we learn that darkness is not out to get us, it's trying to show us what we haven't integrated. Dark powers are not demonic by default. They are not curses. They are not punishments. They are forces, raw, neutral, primal forces of consciousness that we either learn to work with or become enslaved by. Let's go deeper. Power itself is not good or bad. It's amplifying. It takes what already exists inside you and makes it louder. That's why when power shows up in someone who hasn't done their inner work, it becomes dangerous. But when it's embodied by someone who's faced their shadows, loved their wounds, and integrated their truth, it becomes divine force in motion. So why have we been taught to fear it? Because power that doesn't conform to the system is uncontrollable, and anything that can't be controlled gets labeled as evil. Think about that for a second. Who benefits when you fear your own power? Who benefits when you think your intensity, your ambition, your sexuality, your rage, your intuition are dangerous? That's right, the systems that profit from your suppression. The religious programming, the social conditioning, the spiritual bypassing, all of it has one goal: to keep you small, predictable, and obedient. But here's the deeper truth. God did not create darkness as a trap. He created it as a teacher. And if you're brave enough to sit in it, to stop running from it, to stop demonizing it, you will discover that your greatest spiritual growth happens not in the light, but right at the edge of your own shadow. This is where the real initiations begin. Not when you chant mantras on a mountaintop, but when you stand in front of your deepest fear and say, "I see you. I'm not afraid of you anymore. I know this personally. I've faced parts of myself I thought would destroy me. I've had moments in meditation where the visions were so intense, so raw, so filled with archetypal darkness that I thought I was losing my mind. But I wasn't. I was shedding it. I was being shown the parts of myself that were never evil, just unmet. My rage wasn't toxic. It was sacred fury that had been silenced for generations. My fear wasn't weakness. It was protection that had calcified into paralysis. My darkness wasn't a curse. It was the womb of power waiting for me to come home to it. And isn't that the deepest question you can ask yourself right now? What if the part of you you've been rejecting is actually the key to your highest self? What if your darkness is not where your divinity ends, but where it begins? Look at nature. The seed grows in darkness. The baby is formed in the womb. The night sky holds the stars. Darkness is not the absence of light, it is the container for it. It is the mother of illumination. And you, as a spiritual being having a human experience, cannot be complete until you learn to navigate both realms, light and dark, masculine and feminine, creation and destruction. That is the sacred dance of existence. That is the truth behind the veil of fear. So let's reframe what dark power really means. It's not evil energy, it's raw energy, untamed, unprocessed, unclaimed. Think of it like electricity. Electricity can light up a city or burn down a house. It's not the energy that's the problem, it's how you channel it. And most people fear dark power because they were never taught how to hold it. They were only taught how to suppress it, but you can't heal what you hide. You can't transform what you disown. And that's why your power has been asleep, not because it's not there, but because you've been too afraid to touch it. But not anymore. We're not here to play small. We're not here to repeat the lies. We're here to reclaim what was stolen, to take back what was buried, to walk into our own inner underworld and come back with treasure. And that means facing the hard questions, the ones no one else is asking. Like, what part of my darkness I still judging? What power am I afraid to claim because someone told me it made me dangerous? Who am I really when I stop trying to be good and start trying to be whole? This is the beginning of real spiritual courage. The moment you stop trying to escape the dark and start learning from it. The moment you look at your wounds and realize they're not mistakes, they're maps. The moment you feel the energy rising in your body, that ancient force, and instead of suppressing it, you say, "Yes, I'm ready. Teach me." Because here's the ultimate truth. Dark power is not against you. It is waiting for you. It is the part of God that doesn't show up in white robes and glowing auras. It shows up in the storm, in the fire, in the chaos before the rebirth. And if you can face it without flinching, it will not consume you, it will crown you. Are you ready for that?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
We've been taught to seek the light, but no one ever told us that the door to the light is hidden in the dark. That's the paradox most never realize. The deeper you go into your shadow, the closer you get to your truth. Because the darkness isn't there to extinguish your light, it's there to test it, to strengthen it, to show you what you're really made of. And if you're willing to walk through that hidden doorway, you'll discover something most people never do. The supernatural version of yourself. The version that's not limited by fear, not controlled by conditioning, not trapped in performance. The real you, the ancient you, the eternal you. But here's the thing, no one tells you how to find that door. They just say, be positive. Think good thoughts. Raise your vibration. All of that sounds good, but it's not the whole picture. Because if all you do is chase light, you end up running from half of yourself. And anything you run from owns you. That's why so many people feel stuck on their spiritual path. They're meditating, journaling, doing breath work, but they're avoiding the one thing they truly need to face, their own repressed power. How do you know if your power is repressed? It shows up as frustration, as addiction, as self-sabotage, as playing small, as people-pleasing, as relationships that drain you, as dreams that never get off the ground no matter how hard you try. Why? Because you're leaking energy. You're using all your spiritual tools to avoid your shadow instead of embracing it. And that's like trying to build a house on a cracked foundation. It may look pretty for a while, but eventually it collapses. Dark power is the part of your soul that remembers. It remembers every time you were silenced, every time you were punished for being different, every time you were told your voice, your body, your instincts were too much. And it doesn't forget. It waits. It waits for the moment you're strong enough to come back for it. And when that moment comes, it doesn't whisper. It roars. It shakes your life. It breaks your illusions. It strips away everything false so that you can finally see what's real. But the supernatural version of you doesn't rise by accident. It rises through initiation, through confrontation, through choice. You have to choose to stop hiding, choose to stop blaming, choose to stop outsourcing your power to gurus, to systems, to external validation. This is the moment you take radical responsibility for your energy. Not just the parts that feel good, but the parts that scare you. The parts that hold ancient grief, generational rage, primal wisdom. The parts that carry the keys to your evolution. You want to unlock your supernatural self. Then you need to stop asking for permission. Stop waiting for someone to tell you it's safe. It's never going to feel safe to awaken the parts of you that were trained to stay asleep. But that discomfort, that's the doorway. That's the edge. And every time you choose to lean into it instead of retreating, You reclaim a piece of your soul. When I speak of supernatural power, I'm not talking about fantasy. I'm talking about the real, tangible force that arises when you are fully integrated, when your light and your dark are no longer at war. That's when your intuition sharpens to a blade. That's when your presence becomes magnetic. That's when your words carry frequency. That's when your dreams start bending reality. Because you're no longer operating from the surface, you're operating from the source. Have you ever met someone who barely says a word, but their energy fills the room? That's not charisma. That's coherence. That's someone who has walked through their own darkness and come back with power that doesn't need to prove itself. That's what the world is starving for right now, not more perfection, but more embodied truth. People who have done the inner work, people who have met their shadow, danced with their demons, and turned them into allies. And here's what no one tells you: your supernatural self doesn't emerge when you finally become perfect. It emerges when you finally become real, when you stop posturing, when you stop pretending, when you get raw, honest, vulnerable, and feral enough to say, "This is who I am, all of me." That's when your power stops being theoretical and becomes actual. That's when you stop quoting wisdom and start embodying it. But to get there, you have to stop seeing darkness as a threat. You have to start seeing it as a portal. Every fear you face becomes fuel. Every wound you feel becomes a weapon. Every limitation you transmute becomes a ladder to higher consciousness. That's the path. Not up, but in. Not out, but through. So ask yourself, what part of you have you been avoiding because you were told it was dangerous? What if that part is actually sacred? What if the feelings you fear the most are the gateway to your greatest gifts? What if the chaos you're experiencing isn't a breakdown, but a breakthrough? I'm here to tell you, nothing is wasted. Nothing is random. Every shadow you faced, every storm you've survived, every dark night of the soul, it all brought you here. To this moment, to this doorway. And now you get to choose. Shrink back into the familiar pain, or step forward into the unknown power. The supernatural version of you is not waking in the light. It's waiting in the dark, with open arms, with ancient eyes, with a crown made of everything you thought would destroy you. Will you walk through the door? We've been lied to about what it means to know God. We've been told that holiness is about light, purity, and perfection. That to reach God, we must ascend, detach, transcend. But what if the real path to God isn't up there in the clouds, but down here, in the blood, in the bones of your humanity? What if the gateway to the divine is not through escaping your darkness, but through embracing it? This is the divine rebellion, the radical truth that your shadow is not the opposite of God, it is the road to God. You see, true spiritual awakening is not about becoming something else. It's about remembering who you already are beneath the masks. And that remembering doesn't happen by bypassing your pain. It doesn't happen by quoting scriptures or pretending to be enlightened. It happens when you get eye level with the parts of you were taught to deny. The greed, the jealousy, the lust, the rage, the grief, the shame. The parts that scream for attention in the quiet of night. The parts that don't fit into the sanitized image of a spiritual person. That's where the real work begins. That's where the divine lives not in your performance, but in your permission to be fully human. Shadow work is not about fixing yourself, it's about facing yourself. And that's what makes it so terrifying and so liberating. Because when you stop running from your darkness, it stops chasing you. When you stop resisting your pain, it stops controlling you. When you stop condemning your flaws, they stop defining you. Suddenly, you realize that every monster you feared was a misunderstood part of you, and every demon you fought was holding a gift in its hands. But this is rebellion, make no mistake, because when you do this work, you are defying centuries of programming. You are rejecting the idea that you must be good to be divine. You're walking away from the lie that God only loves the polished version of you. You're saying, if I was made in the image of God, then even my darkness must be divine, and that changes everything. Do you feel that? That's not arrogance. That's sovereignty. That's what happens when you stop seeking God outside yourself and start realizing the sacred has been whispering to you from within your wounds all along. That's what happens when you stop praying for understanding. Show me what this pain is trying to teach me. Show me what this anger is trying to protect. That's a different kind of prayer. That's the kind of prayer that doesn't just ask for miracles, it becomes one. But this path isn't pretty. It's not Instagrammable. It's gritty. It's raw. It will break you open. It will humble you. It will force you to meet parts of yourself you swore you'd never show anyone. And that's why most people avoid it, because it requires death. Death of the ego. Death of the identity you built to survive. Death of the illusions you clung to. Shadow work is a funeral for who you thought you had to be. But on the other side of that funeral is freedom. And here's the deepest secret. God isn't afraid of your shadow. You are. God doesn't flinch at your darkness. You do. Because God doesn't see in duality. God doesn't divide you into good and bad, light and dark, worthy and unworthy. God sees wholeness. God sees truth. And the moment you stop judging yourself, you begin to see yourself the way God does, not as broken, but as becoming. So let me ask you something. When you meditate, are you trying to escape your thoughts, or are you willing to sit with them like sacred messengers? When you feel triggered, do you collapse into shame, or do you lean in and ask, what is this showing me about myself? When someone rejects you, do you spiral, or do you say, another invitation to meet the part of me that still fears abandonment? That's the shift. That's the rebellion. Turning every wound into a window. Every fear into a flashlight. Every trigger into a teacher. That's how you turn your shadow into sacred ground. That's how you walk with God, not above your pain, but through it, holding God's hand, not in perfection, but in presence. And once you begin doing this, something wild happens. Your energy changes. You become untouchable, not because bad things don't happen to you, but because nothing can take you out of alignment with your truth anymore. You stop reacting, you start responding. You stop chasing, you start attracting. You stop begging to be chosen, and you choose yourself. People feel it. They don't know what changed, but they know they can't lie around you anymore. They can't wear masks. Your energy demands truth without ever speaking a word. That's what embodied shadow work does. It doesn't make you perfect. It makes you real. And the world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more honest ones. More integrated ones. More people who are willing to say, I've seen the worst in me, and I still love myself. That's the kind of love that changes lives. That's the kind of love that reflects the divine. Because it's not based on conditions, it's rooted in revelation. So if you want to know God, truly know God, don't just seek the light. Seek all of it. Seek the places you've been afraid to go. Sit in the silence that makes others squirm. Touch the grief you've buried. Speak the truths you've silenced. Love the parts of you you were told not to show. That's where God is. Not at the top of the mountain, but at the bottom of your soul, waiting for you to remember you were never separate. You were never unworthy. You were never lost. You were simply hiding from yourself. There comes a moment on the spiritual path where something irreversible happens. You stop trying to choose between your light and your dark. You stop swinging between the healer and the warrior, the student and the master, the angel and the shadow. You stop asking, which part of me should I be today? And instead you say, I am all of it. I am the fire and the calm. I am the gentle and the fierce. I am the blade and the bomb. And that is the final integration, the moment you become both the weapon and the healer. We spend so much of our lives trying to be one or the other. We want to be kind, but not too assertive. We want to be powerful, but not too intimidating. We want to be spiritual, but not too raw. And in doing so, we split ourselves in half. We amputate the parts of us that are inconvenient, that don't fit the image, that might make others uncomfortable. But wholeness does not come from being digestible. It comes from being true. And truth is not always soft. It doesn't always whisper. Sometimes truth has claws. Sometimes it roars. Sometimes it burns everything down so you can finally rebuild from what's real. To become the weapon and the healer means you no longer fear your strength. You no longer apologize for your fire. You no longer dim your light to make others feel safe. But here's what makes that power sacred. It's conscious. It's rooted in love. It's not reactive, it's responsive. And that's the difference between a weapon that wounds and a weapon that liberates. When you've done your shadow work, your power doesn't come from ego, it comes from alignment. You don't speak to dominate, you speak to awaken. You don't fight to destroy, you fight to protect what's holy. But this is not about being aggressive. This is about being available to all of who you are. Imagine walking through life no longer afraid of your own voice, no longer shrinking in the face of conflict, no longer betraying yourself to keep the peace. That's what happens when you integrate. You don't lose your compassion, you expand it. You don't lose your softness, you just stop sacrificing your boundaries to maintain it. You become the one who can sit with someone's deepest pain without flinching, and also the one who can cut through illusion with a single sentence. You become the one who can look into the eyes of your enemy and see their wounded child, and also the one who can walk away without guilt when your spirit knows it's time to go. That's divine power. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's embodied. And it doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. But let me be clear, it takes courage to reach this point. Real courage. Because integration requires you to meet every part of yourself you once abandoned. The part that lied, the part that manipulated, the part that begged for love, the part that wanted revenge, the part that failed. You don't get to become whole by skipping over those chapters. You become whole by holding them, by saying, even you belong here, even you have something to teach me. And when you do that, when you look at your own darkness and say, I see you, I love you, I choose you, you unlock something ancient. You activate a level of self-trust that can't be shaken, because you're no longer afraid of what might come out of you. You know every part of your being. You've walked through your own fire. You've buried your illusions. You've kissed your scars. And now, you're not performing anymore. You're living. There's a reason they say the wounded healer is the most powerful. It's not because they're perfect, it's because they've suffered and still chose love. It's because they've seen the worst in themselves and still chose to serve. And now, their presence carries weight. Not because of what they've read, but because of what they've transmuted. So let me ask you, what if your darkness was never the enemy, but the initiation? What if your pain wasn't a punishment, but a portal? What if becoming your full self means accepting that you are both the storm and the shelter? You don't have to be one or the other. That was the lie. You were born to be everything, and now you finally are.